So let me start by welcoming Vivek, Guru, and Farid for this CxO panel discussion. We are really happy to have you here, and it's great that you guys have taken the time out to spend some time discussing an interesting topic today. Now, the format of today's discussion is going to be like this. I am going to give a very brief introduction to the topic itself. And then I would like, because for the benefit of the people who are going to listen to this podcast later, our customers and users, as you know, we have about 10,000 customers and some million users across the world. And this is generally more of a content creation activity that we do as part of our brand initiatives. And that I'm one of the brand champions at Kissflow, and that's why we are doing this. It's not really specific to do anything with the product or the actual product, but it's more of what Kissflow as a brand stands for and how we can help conversations among our customers in broadly related to what we are doing in a very general sense. So we don't have to limit our discussions to either the product or the users. We can be more coming from your business context and your experiences from both in your existing company and your previous experience on this topic. You could share them, and then we could bounce off ideas and discuss and get the ball rolling, in terms of having a lively discussion. We will see whether 30 minutes, 45 minutes, if we need be, we will extend it. But if we find that it is enough to have 30, 45 minutes, we will stop there. So we will decide the actual time as we go along, but definitely not more than 45 minutes, I would say, because anything longer, it's difficult for people to pay attention and listen to. And so the format is, you will, after the intro to the topic, I will hand over the mic to all of you. Each one of you can actually introduce briefly about yourself, a brief bio about yourself and about your company. And then you can also talk a little about your business context. And then we will go around for all the three people. And then we'll come back in the second round. You could share your first thoughts about the topic with some points or notes that you might have already thought about, and you could share your first thoughts. And then once these first thoughts are shared by all the three people, then you can take on from there and discuss further. It's going to be more of an open, freewheeling discussion. And in between, if I have some questions, I will ask some questions. If you have a question for somebody else, like, you can also ask a question. So it's only a very small group of three people. So I don't see any problem in even in between asking questions and getting the discussion more lively and interactive. And towards the end, we will just have some closing remarks. So that's the format of the discussion today. And let me go to the next slide. 1 second. Just give me a second. Sorry. You are able to see the topic here now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the topic that we have chosen for today's discussion. So essentially, we are going to talk about an underlying conflict, or seems to be a conflict. We have to really discuss, is really a conflict at all in the first place. But generally, people assume that it's a balance between two different opposing objectives. One is you need to have systems, you need to have processes, you need to have control and coordination, and that's what makes the organization scale and grow, and you need to have some order. You can't have too much of chaos. At the same time, we also see that the same things could also be detrimental or hindrance to empowerment, to building employee engagement and happiness and collaboration and innovation and creativity and all those stuff. So trying to balance these two things is really the challenge in today's world. So how do we do that? What is your experience? What do you think is basically what we are going to talk about. So I'll leave this topic point here on the screen for you to keep looking at it, and we can proceed with your, starting with your bio and your introduction, and we can proceed further with the discussion. Please. Maybe Farid, you can start with Farid, and then we can go on to Vivek and then Guru.
Okay, well, thanks for the opportunity for inviting us. And so quickly, my name is Farid Guediri. I'm the founder and CEO of OptimizeIT Inc. Our focus is, we're a consulting company, and our focus is helping our clients optimize business performance through specifically business process optimization, project execution, and business analytics. So we see Kissflow as really, now that you guys are expanding your scope into projects and analytics, you're literally covering our entire scope. So we went from Kissflow being a business process management platform to now being a project management, case management, BI, etc. Digital workplace, collaboration, all of that. So it's really the ideal platform for a CxO to take a high view of the organization and monitor the big key performance indicators, the major processes, where they're at, how they can be improved, etc. So we are very close to signing a partnership with Kissflow, and I'm just waiting for your signature. So we're very close to that, and we're very pleased about it. Now, in terms of, so did you want me to go into my first thoughts, or do you want me to pass the mic? Hello?
Sorry. Let's go with the introductions first, and then we will come back to the business context and the first thoughts.
Sounds good.
Great. So, hi everyone. This is Vivek Subramaniam. I'm dialing in from Hyderabad in India. I am the founder of a firm called Fourth Partner Energy, and we are India's largest distributed solar company. We build solar power generating assets for industrial and commercial applications, both on-site as well as off-site solar plants. We have now started our 10th year in existence, and we've been also fortunate to have international institutions, financial institutions. We have TPG from the US as our private equity investor. We have debt lines from some of India's largest banks, as well as internationally from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and so on. What we are trying to help India achieve is majorly decarbonization and helping move to a higher proportion of renewable energy. As it stands today, the commercial opportunity is very large. We sell power much cheaper than grid rates, and so now it's just the question of getting more and more customers to adopt this scale. From the point of view of this conversation, it is contextual to say that I don't think we are quite a startup now, but you know, this year our target is to be almost $100 million in revenue, but you know, our scale of growth is extremely acute. So we almost double every year, which means that every ounce of our systems processes are stretched. And to that extent, I found this subject very relevant, and I would love to share our thoughts, and more importantly, hear from some of the other panelists in this forum. Thank you.
Yeah, Guru.
Hi, everybody. My name is Guru Kirti Gurunathan. I'm dialing in from Chennai, India. I am one of the 3 co-founders of Caratlane. Personally, about myself, I have about 20 years of work experience coming from a technology background. I'm a computer science engineer and a postgraduate in management. But throughout the 20 years, I've been primarily leading the technology teams to deliver software and also handle all the technology touch points at Caratlane. I have done a few roles outside of technology within Caratlane at my capacity, but primarily it's about working with the entire stakeholders at Caratlane and providing technology solutions both for internal teams and external teams. About Caratlane, Caratlane is India's largest omni-channel jewelry company. We started off as an online jeweler and branched off into retail space. Today, we have a very, very hybrid approach of both online and retail coexisting and working together. So we are a subsidiary of Titan Company, and but still run as an independent company in all our operations. That's pretty much about us. So we are trying to build a brand for Caratlane. So we are not like a marketplace, but as an individual independent brand, we are trying to build a national brand for jewelry. That's about us.
Okay, so yeah, let's move on to the actual first thoughts. Farid, we can start with you on the specific topic of balancing between these two seemingly contradictory directions or objectives of an organization. What is your experience in your own personal organization?
Well, so my first thoughts are in terms of what I'm going to do. I'm going to lump process, systems, controls, all of that under what I call structure.
Okay.
And then the other side, you know, the empowerment, collaboration, employee happiness, I'm going to call that engagement, employee engagement. Mm-hmm. And the balance between structure and engagement is very, very doable because most people prefer structure to chaos. And they know intuitively that chaos generates a lot more stress on people's lives than structure and order. Now, how do you get to that place where the balance, where people accept the process, the controls, and are engaged? In my personal experience, one of the preconditions to success is to make sure that those people who are the custodians of those business processes are invited to become architects of the target state. I have seen way too many examples where companies start, you know, reimagining the current operating model and virtually exclude the people who are going to live in that process every single day. And I think that is one of the most common mistakes that I have seen. So what you got to do, if you want engagement, happiness, collaboration, more importantly than the platform itself, than the legacy systems, the cloud, all of that, it's, you know, making sure that you invite those who have a direct stake into that process because they are going to be executing it every day. So invite them to the table, and I've done my best in the past to do that. People who are out in the field or delivering healthcare in, you know, at the homes, invite them to the table, and you will be amazed at how imaginative they are and how well they will, you know, help you redesign the current process.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Vivek?
No, very relevant point. Absolutely. I think involving the operational functions into the same task of designing what should be the checks and balances is actually the right way forward. I think for starters, for me, even if I look at the header, system, processes, control, and coordination, in my mind immediately, I don't like the word control by definition. I like systems, I like processes, I love coordination. I don't like control.
Okay.
And essentially, I think the word should be audit, not control.
Okay.
I think control gives an impression of a leash and and basically that's not what you need. I think if you have brought the right people to the right places in the bus, as they say, they would take you to the right place. They will be the first ones to acknowledge that the only way they can get more productive is if there are systems and processes. People misunderstand productivity as speed of execution. Productivity is not just speed of execution, it is also speed of execution without mistakes. And once you combine both of these factors, they'll be the first ones to say that these are the checks and balances that should be put in place on their own team. And therefore they would benefit from making sure that it becomes an automated execution process rather than it required to be having checks and balances. So proud customers of Kissflow, when we have implemented this, we have seen two things happen through. One, we involve the operational departments on what kind of checks and balances there should be in play for submission of a simple process of, for example, payment releases. Once those parameters have been defined in consultation with the end user itself, then adherence to this is an easy check and balance, and B is also something that can be, and so if somebody is not meeting those guidelines or if somebody is falling short of those standards, then the process should allow for it to be a more collaborative process. So for giving you a simple example, the simple instructions we gave our finance and accounts team, for example, is think of yourselves not as controllers, but more as support function. And if you all are a support function, go out and tell, for example, if the procurement team has requested for a payment to be made to one of their vendors, but if the vendor is falling short of certain documents that had to be submitted, rather than saying this payment is rejected, make sure that you clearly document why, and if required, speak to the vendor and help him through the process of making those document submissions. Most often, taking that proactive, helpful approach, that collaborative approach, would make a compelling difference to that relationship in the long term. The moment the word control is used in that domain, then the vendor immediately senses that, this is classically a firm that is holding back payments and extending the working capital cycle, for example, and being unfair on contractual terms that have been accepted and agreed. He is not going to introspect whether he missed out on certain documents and whether they were in the right form and format. So high level message, just to summarize on my first points, is first, I don't like the word control. It should be more like audit. It should be more collaboration. And B, there should be greater, as has already been highlighted, apart from involving the user in defining the standards of systems and processes, there should be greater visibility and collaboration in highlighting why those standards are met or not met, and being proactive in helping the other parties through it all.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Guru?
Yeah, I think there were great points from both Vivek and Farid. So what I would like to start off with is to say that we have system, processes, coordination, etc. happening around us on a day-to-day basis also. So it happens in our family, it happens in our society where we live. And so these are not necessary bad things or evil things as some may portray it to be. I think definitely these are things that would benefit from an organizational context at any point in time. So just like how we have in family and society also, there is empowerment, there is collaboration, and there is happiness. As long as it's well defined and within the boundaries, definitely it can bound to help us in the growth. So what I quickly thought about is it can probably be done in terms of 4 A's. The first A being awareness, to just bring awareness to the organization in terms of the benefits some of these processes systems like audit, like Vivek was saying, audit and coordination can bring in. So first is to initially start talking about it, bring awareness. The second A being adoption. So we help support the organization and the members at various stages to help in adopting that. So we don't just bring in awareness and leave it for them to take it up. We support, understand their problems and do that. That is acknowledging their problems. That is the third A. You acknowledge with understanding the problems, do improvements over it, refine it, and make them aware of the new issues, and then aware of the new changes that was done and make them adopt it. And finally, acceptance, I think, can happen just by itself. Though there may be an initial inertia, as always, old habits die hard. So you may have certain inertia in the beginning, but there's also another practice, I think, which is in modern terms, is if you do something for 21 times, it becomes a regular habit. So keep doing it and refining it. Definitely people will also start appreciating it eventually after seeing the benefits of it. So that's what can create a culture of collaboration. The second point that you have is the empowerment, collaboration, and happiness is all in the culture of the organization, and how well we do the first one and lead to the second one positively is what I feel.
Yeah. Okay. Farid, you want to add something more to this additional points that has been mentioned now?
Very good points. I just wanted to go back on something that Vivek said about productivity, that he's absolutely right. It's not just speed of execution, which obviously workflows do that very well, but you also have to ensure that you're executing without mistakes. So you got to have, the business rules, well defined. And so, you execute, but you have to do it without mistakes, which in my mind is quality. You also have to do it with other things, safety, ensure that the safety is built into the workflow. Certain things have to be done. If you're in industries like manufacturing, like construction, like healthcare, where safety is paramount, you have to bake that in. So it's speed, quality, safety, and regulatory compliance. So you got to lump all of that and bake it into the workflow so that you not only have speed of execution / productivity, but you have all of the other success factor built in.
Okay. So in terms of, do you think that empowerment and collaboration and employee happiness is a separate compartment, and systems process control is a separate compartment, and the topic itself is a little biased in that, as if they are two separate compartments, and you need to really keep a balance. They can never really reinforce each other. It's only a question of negotiating a balance between the two. Do you all believe that this is true, or is it something missing here? Are we even asking the wrong question? Maybe it's not conflicting at all. It is going to, one is going to reinforce the other. Do you see one reinforcing the other, or is going to be two conflicting objectives always to be balanced?
Can I go on that?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Guru here. I think it coexists, and it can be done even through the systems and processes. I'll quote an example in the software context because I understand that better. So there is something called Scrum methodology in software.
Okay.
You might have heard about it in the organizations that you are all part of. Basically, it allows, it puts certain systems and processes in place wherein the team of people which is going to be executing or building the software is going to be initially starting to plan, they estimate, and they commit to a certain set of activities, and then they proceed on executing it for a period of time called sprints. So which is about, it can be a 2-week sprint or it can be a 1-week sprint. So during that 2-week period, they have everyday stand-up meetings wherein people assemble around and then talk about what they have been doing in the last one day and what they're going to be doing today, and if they have any roadblocks or anything that is hindering their work. And at the end of it, the process ends by the team giving a demonstration of what they have achieved. And then they talk about something called a retrospective of how well it went, what went well and what did not go well, and what they should be continuing to do, what they should stop doing, and any other process improvements. So at a broad level, at a high level, this is the summarization. If you think about it, this empowers the individuals and the team to actually commit to something. So nobody from the management or organizational hierarchy just thrusts on them and then say, this is what you need to be doing. It's only the team that is empowered to take what they can take. And then once they are done with their bucket full of hours that is left for the 2-week sprints, they're just going to say enough of how much have I taken, and this is what I'm committing to. And it has to have a collaboration because it's a team effort in terms of the output. If one person is not able to meet the commitment, there can be other set of people who can just pitch in and then help that person to deliver the part of the work, because at the end of the sprint, it's not about individuals. The entire team only demonstrates, and the measurement is also on the team side. And the employee happiness is because of this empowerment and collaboration, because there is not a hierarchy thrusting or somebody from external influences coming in. They are just doing their part of the work, and they are doing it at the time space that has been given to them. And it comes with the measurement and productivity and velocity also, which the management team can then finally review it and then help the team to succeed in the subsequent ones. So that's a simple example of how the process and system can help on the deliverables also.
Yeah, excellent example here. Because I think I really like that Scrum example, because it's a classic, well-proven methodology, at least in the software industry. Everybody, at least in the software industry, understands that. But many other industries are also using that methodology outside of software to get things done. And it's a very classic example of how systems and processes are not conflicting with employee empowerment and happiness, but in a way kind of reinforces one another in a cycle. No, it is like a circle where you empower people, they collaborate, they are happy, they are put their heart and soul into the job, and they pitch in for each other and they deliver. And then they are all bound by some kind of a structure and some kind of systems and process they all comply to. And even those processes are self-designed. It's more like a self-organizing team. So there is really a very integrated approach to each of these two, initially supposed to look like a conflicting goals to be balanced, but actually there are many examples like Scrum where this has been used to reinforce each other in a circular way. That's a very good example. Other people can also add some of our similar such examples from their experience.
I don't have another example, but I'd like to take this point slightly differently as well. Mm-hmm. I think when we, if you go back more conceptually to your question, it is classically a question that is asked of when a startup becomes larger, right? I went back to our background as well. And in this, usually what we see is, when you've expanded to become much larger, you have people across different rooms or different floors or different offices. And that's where all of these conflicts start. So there are two things that I think need to be in that context be kept in mind, apart from all the points that we've already discussed. So first, involve the users in designing what they think should be systems and processes, and check and balance against that. But apart from that, I think what you also need to ensure fundamentally is that the system and process that is designed is finally implemented in a form and shape that is fairly flexible. Okay. What happens is when these systems and processes become outdated and people are still forced to adhere to them is when it becomes one source of irritation as well.
Yeah.
So whatever you do, be it an ERP, be it a software system, be it a workflow system, it should be used in a certain form and shape. It should be implemented in a certain form and shape such that it can be altered. If the process flow needs changing, if the checks and balances need changing, if the approving authorities need changing, you should be able to do it very quickly. Otherwise, people would just find the entire process archaic and therefore find the immediate excuse to not want to adhere to that. So I think there's a takeaway for softwares to be more flexible in this entire play. So that's point one. And two is the other key things that happens when you move from being a smaller organization to a larger organization and move away from being in a room to a multi-office kind of setup is that you lose communication. So the other thing that the process should allow you to do is to allow people to communicate, be it in the form of giving explanations, reasons, or simply just picking up the phone and speaking. It should allow for communication, because if you don't communicate between people at the end of the day, then again, you will find an excuse to break the process and tell us why it's not working. So I think if we keep these two human related elements on top of what we are anyway discussing, it should become a more sustainable play.
Okay. Farid, you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, first of all, the topic that you picked is actually a very relevant, very good one, but I don't view these two poles as, being in opposition with each other. On the one hand, process and systems, on the other hand, employee engagement, empowerment, happiness, etc. I don't see these as, competing with each other. I see them as supplementing one another. Because even innovation, which is part of empowerment, is not in opposition with process. If you have a process or a workflow that is designed, I think it was Vivek who was saying, with flexibility in mind. And one of the things that I particularly like about Kissflow, it's really a true no-code platform. That means if you have a subject matter expert who owns that process, if they know Excel and they know how to build a few formulas, they can jump in the middle of that workflow and adjust it exactly the way they want without ever putting an IT request. That's empowerment. It's empowerment, but it's also innovation, because I had an idea and, we've made changes on the fly to very, complex mission critical business processes while we had requests that were already in flight. And we did not disrupt anything. We made the change, and the platform recognized that this new or modified business rule pertains to this half of the request. The others are already, gone through that step and, are not impacted. So you can innovate in flight. That is the optimum flexibility and empowerment. So I don't see these concepts as antagonistic or having to be constantly balanced. I think they can be harmonized, again, if you have, the right leadership and you have, the right approach. They can coexist very, very well.
Okay. So the last two questions I will ask them, you can, to all the three of you together, you can answer them together, and then we can go to the closing remarks. One is, I want you guys to talk about the role of leadership from a CEO, CxO, from the context of culture, and how the leadership and culture play a role in this whole topic that we are discussing today. And the last thing that I want you to talk briefly about is, what do you think technology can play, and what role technology can play? Farid briefly touched upon it. Not necessarily only what Kissflow is doing, but even otherwise outside of Kissflow, there are certain things that technology could possibly do better, which could aid in this process. If you have some thoughts on that, you can also share that. So we can talk these 2 points around the table.
Okay, perhaps I'll go first.
Yeah.
Guru here.
Yeah.
I think a leader should be an enabler across the organization, and basically that enablement comes by good listening skills. So understand the pain points of various departments in the organization at one end and understand the other business commitments, the context outside of it, which is the board and shareholders and all of that stuff. So basically to take that, one is at the business commitment side, the other one is how you can achieve that by enabling the teams inside to perform to their optimal level or the best level. So we have to create a culture of high performance in the organization by understanding the needs of individual departments. Each department is different in its own way, so not one thing or one process or one structure fits for everybody. So we have to understand that, and then, as Vivek earlier pointed out, have the right people to drive it out, because one person cannot just be doing everything. A process is as good as its execution. So it's very easy to set up the process, but there has to be champions to keep executing that at every level, and it has to cascade to the last. So they always say that the last person in the organization should be able to adopt it at ease, and a leader should be available and be able to emulate that behavior himself or herself in order to make that happen. So that's the first part. What is the second part? I think you talked about technology.
Role of technology, yeah.
No, I think technology is again a tool, for doing this. So it can be done, without technology also. But today's collaboration and distributed systems and people being available in multiple locations, communication, all of that creates a lot of artifacts, and technology helps in ensuring that all of this is present in a digital format, and you're able to use some of the systems available in order to achieve the outcome that you have set out to do in any kind of a process or system. Like earlier pointed out, be it the financial control or the purchase system, or be it the software development, or be it the HRMS, ERP, all systems today helps in getting data recorded and getting the validations inserted for the checks and balances, helping in collaboration within the team. All of that happens with the technology, but people have to be using it. They have to adopt to it, and there have to be an awareness brought in to be able to use it. And constantly you got to measure that. The key is to measure and improvise. If you just set it up and then give everything to everybody and then don't even look at it, then it's just the operation is success, but the patient did not survive the types it can end up becoming.
Okay,
that is the role of technology.
Yeah. Okay, Vivek.
I think maybe all relevant points have mostly been made and are brought to the table. I'll quickly, from a leadership perspective, I think first important task is to get the right people on. And if you get the right people on, then most often than not, these conflicts just fall away. Two is in conflict resolution. I think conflict resolution is more about showing perspective. I think most people, good people, will see why so-called different KPIs actually contribute to the same organizational objective. Or two conflicting KPIs may also serve the same organizational objective. They just need to know which is more important in what sort of context. And I think that's what a leader should help define and help resolve if it indeed comes to it. Three, and most importantly, I think, is the culture. I think it is the leader's job to ensure that you create a culture that encourages flexibility, encourages collaboration, encourages respect for each other's time, and encourages a culture for excellence and quality. And I think that culture is what the leader spends the most time trying to define internally. I don't claim to be a technology guy, so probably not the right guy to answer that question. But I think on the technology side, it should allow for flexibility. Most often than not, when people think technology, you use it as an enabler, and so it should make your job more efficient and not make you slower. And so I think where technology makes you slower is only when it is not flexible. And so having flexibility is super important, allowing for it to be, as has been rightly said, for us, we have at any one point of time, we are running projects over 80 to 100 different sites. And we have engineers from all of these sites sending us data on what's happening at these sites. So technology that allows us to be distributed, allows us to be still integrated as we are distributed, is something that is obviously something that we seek on this front. I think all of these systems and process enablers are welcome, so long as they can be flexible. I think that should be the overriding message on all technology initiatives.
Okay. Farid?
Good points. What I would say about leadership is, to me, a leader is really somebody who has enough depth, enough substance, enough experience that can help, the company, the team, connect the dots between strategy, tactics, and execution. So your strategy has to be very coherent, cohesive. I think it was Vivek who was saying that if you establish conflicting objectives and you are pitting department against department, you will never get to execution. And if you do, it's not going to be pretty. So you have to be sure that when you lay out the strategic plan, that you are well aware of how the different pieces connect, whether it's sales, operations, procurement, HR. It has to be very coherent, cohesive. You also have to have enough know-how to make sure that when a strategy is broken down into departmental tactics, that those tactics make sense, that they are still aligned with the corporate strategy, and help mid-management translate those broad strategies into departmental objectives and associate key performance indicators, so that when you get to the execution part, you will have, dashboard that will tell you whether your strategy is working or not. So you got to baseline your key performance indicators, and then periodically, look at your metrics, your day sales outstanding, your gross margin. Where are they moving? Are they up? Are they down? So that is a big part of leadership. But that's not sufficient. You also have to be the chief communicator. And I've seen way too many instances where people didn't even know what the strategy was. You got to be willing to sit down and answer a lot of questions. Yeah, I see that bullet, but what exactly does it mean to me, to my role? You've got to articulate the value proposition to the individual roles so that they understand. If you're a director of an agency in healthcare or a foreman on the construction side, you have to understand how, if we achieve these strategic goals, this is what it means to you and your family. You got to be able to communicate that very clearly, and you'll be amazed what it will do to engagement, innovation, empowerment, collaboration, etc. So that's my thoughts on strategy. One more thing on strategy. You have to me, leadership is really about creating what I call Gestalts. I think it's a German word. And what the principle of Gestalt is when you take, when the whole is greater the sum of the individual components. So if you take a team that's made of engineers, of tool designers, of whatever, and you manage to create an environment where the whole is greater than the sum of the individual components, you have achieved something really big. And leadership is about doing just that, making sure that the whole is greater than the sum of its individual components. Now, in terms of technology, one simple thought. If technology is not subservient to the needs of the end user, it's not doing its job. Okay, so everything has to be designed with the end user in mind first, and then secondarily to meet the needs of the executives and the mid-managers. But if you cannot satisfy the need of the process custodian, the guy or the gal who does that job every single day, you're missing the point. Technology is missing the point. So again, include them in the design, not only of the workflow, but you know, the UI itself, the forms, and you'll be amazed how often they will tell you, yeah, this is great, but if you give me this drop down and this field from this ERP system and this CRM system all in one page, you are going to cut my job in half, because now I don't have to bounce through 17 different screens to perform a simple purchase order. So engage them and make technology subservient to the need of the end user. And if you do that, you will get the right workflows, the right dashboards, and senior management will have what they need as well from technology. But too often we flip the equation. We try to cater to the executive suite, and we find out 6 months later that nobody's actually using the system because nobody asked their opinion. So those are my thoughts on leadership and technology. Thank
you for the excellent points. Yeah, I think we are kind of coming closer to the end of this discussion. So let me make some closing remarks. So it's really important for people to understand that this systems, process control and coordination and empowerment, collaboration and happiness, they are not really conflicting goals. You don't really have to negotiate and balance between them, but they can be made to reinforce each other if we are able to involve people, empower them, involve them in the design, including the design of the forms, like what Farid was saying. And technology, like what we have discussed here, has to be very flexible in enabling this kind of collaboration and coordination, not from a top-down approach, but in a more lateral collaborative approach. If technology can help in doing that, then it's definitely possible to achieve a lot of achieve a lot of productivity and innovation and collaboration happening within the system without too much of chaos. And I think that the increasingly technology is converging. Earlier we used to have a lot of tools, separate product for HR, separate product for purchase, separate product for this, that, ERP, the spaghetti of tools and technologies being used. You have Google Docs, you have Excel sheets, you have MS Office, you have Skype, you have chat, WhatsApp. So increasingly there is a convergence happening in technology also, trying to bring them all together into a unified platform where all these things can happen at the same time. Empowerment can happen, involving people, people deciding to change business rules on the fly can happen by the end user or the process manager, and still systems and controls and processes and coordination happen seamlessly, and the executive suite actually gets a complete visibility of where the bottlenecks are and what is really happening. All that seamlessly without being a very top-down approach. In a very involved process it is happening. So the technology is also growing to a converged role of enabling this kind of cultural transformation from what we used to have in the industrial society to a more collaborative, empowered team cultures in today's organizations. Technology also has evolved to meet those requirements. So, and we are very proud to be part of the journey of organizations like yours, which is trying to do all these together and achieve greater level of high performance teams. And we are here to help you with tools and systems and platforms which will enable you to do that. And this part of this exercise for us is to also listen to CEOs like you of mid-sized organizations, so that we can also take some of these inputs back to our product teams and see how we can incorporate some of these suggestions in the way we approach our future product roadmap and things like that. So you can also have a brief closing thoughts, all of you, and then we can end the discussion. All of you can have a few last few points that you want to mention, and then we can end the discussion.
Well, you know, I can go if I may.
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Well, so in terms of, you know, closing thoughts, where, you know, when I look at, you know, the overarching theme, you know, that business process and workflows and collaboration, digital workplace, all of that falls under an umbrella that, you know, we all talk about all the time, and that's digital transformation. So if we look at it from that perspective, to me, what digital transformation really boils down to, it's the delivery of value to the client with speed, at the lowest cost possible, without compromising quality, safety, and compliance. That is really the gist of digital transformation. It's not an esoterical exercise, intellectual exercise. It's very real. It's delivering the most value to the client in the least amount of time, the least cost, etc. Now, to deliver that value, and by value I mean anything, a new service that the client wants, a new product, or even a couple of new features within an existing product, regardless of what the value is, it is difficult to think of value that can be created and delivered without literally traversing the entire corporate value chain. Because that client need starts with an idea or a request that comes from marketing or customer service or wherever. It has to be designed, it has to be marketed, it has to be sold, it has to be procured, etc., etc. So any value has to basically go across the entire company to be delivered. And in my view, even more relevant than the enterprise systems that run companies like the ERPs and CRMs, workflows is really what allows the circulation and the channeling of this value very quickly across the entire organization. And I cannot stress enough how transformational that concept is. Again, if it is accessible to those who execute those processes every day. So I think of it more in terms of value delivery. It's a means towards an end. The end is really how much value can you deliver faster than the competition at a lower cost without jeopardizing anything else. Quality, safety, and compliance.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll basically take cue from what Farid was saying and add to that. So the value chain in our organization starts from procurement of raw material till the point it actually becomes a beautiful jewelry adorned by a woman. So there is like value and part of responsibility of every individual in that particular journey, and that can be defined as workflows in between and broken down into various workflows, and you can actually have systems and processes in place in order to enhance the value at every single stage of the organization, so that finally it actually becomes for the end consumer as a product that they use, as a jewelry that they adorn, and eventually that the value of that from generating the business revenue, and then the shareholder value, and the value for the whole organization goes up also. So it's a very good thread that Farid was describing about, and I felt that the systems and processes will help in doing that. And but all of this is possible only if there is employee satisfaction that happens. End of the day, workflows are there, but people have to be happy about following it and executing it. Otherwise, it just shows up in the outcome at every single stage, and it might be very small. It might have a very small impact at the lower end of the value chain, but end outcome, when it reaches the customer, it just creates dissatisfaction. All the surveys that we do will show that out. So definitely we have to ensure that it is fixed at the source, nipped at the bud, so that it doesn't affect the consumer experience at the end of it.
Okay.
Very relevant points made. I learned a lot through this conversation in the last hour. I really don't have any other points to add except that this is an extremely relevant subject, and I think we've covered it quite well. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek, Farid, and Guru. It was an excellent conversation today, and we will come out with similar sessions every month with different CEOs talking about different topics, and we will keep you posted on those podcasts as well. And please stay tuned. And thank you very much for your time and effort. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invite. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.